What is up, guys? Riven Killer Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be taking a full team using the brand new exotic raid trace rifle from the Garden of Salvation raid, the Divinity, through Destiny's largest raid ever, the Last Wish, and ranking its performance on each encounter. How does this brand new raid weapon fare in the absolute upper echelon? Well, let's find out. By the way, guys, if you like this type of content, please support it. I'm getting absolutely killed by database clickbait. Alright, now let's take a look at this weapon's exotic perks. Firstly, we have intrinsically Judgment. Sustained damage with this weapon envelops the target in a field that weakens and disrupts them. Essentially, when you're shooting an enemy, they will get kind of a Vex aura around them, making their entire body really, well, the entire area inside that aura especially, a critical. Also, it's going to increase all incoming damage by around 25% from all other sources, so your teammates. Moving on from there, we have another unique perk, Penance. Targets under the effects of Judgment long enough are struck with a burst of damage. So this thing doesn't do a ton of damage, and Penance is supposed to make up for that in those long boss damage scenarios. And I mean, what are 6 divinities gonna do in terms of Penance? Is it gonna be going off all the time? Well, as you can see, oh my goodness, it's bad. We do basically no damage against Kalli. Basically none. Unfortunately, like all those scenarios in my head of what could happen, like the divinity buffing itself and then getting like ×6 the damage, that's, you know, a possibility, or Penance going off all the time, none of those things happen. Penance triggers as often when one person is shooting it as 6 people, which is kind of weird, but that is the way it works. And you kind of do get a buff from yourself / from the other divinities, like you'll do a starting amount of damage and then more damage, but that's it. So, 6 divinities, trash out of 10, just not worth using at all, but, that's not really what you're supposed to do, are you? So, we switched things around. I was the only person using the divinity to buff the rest of my team, and we tried it again, as you can see, to much greater success. The thing about the divinity, and what makes it so good, is that even though Luke Smith wrote an entire article about how things are not going to stack anymore, well, the divinity's debuff stacks. So that means you can be standing in a well and get a certain buff, then you can use a bow or a debuff grenade to debuff the enemy, make them take 30% more damage, and then also use the divinity for an additional 25% more damage. No other debuff stacks with each other. It's just all the debuffs and then the divinity stacks on top of those. So that is a huge chunk of extra damage you're getting by one person running this gun, and that's why it's so good. So overall, with one divinity, I'm going to give this thing a 9 out of 10. Very good against Kalli. And part of the reason it does get so high is because the Vex aura it creates makes Kalli so much easier to shoot. She does kind of spaz out and move around, and going for her crit can be difficult. The divinity helps solve that. In any event, it is time to move on to the second encounter against Shuro Chi, and obviously, for the memes, we gotta try to stun her at least one time, all using divinities. So that's exactly what we did, and as you can see, we barely got to half of her health. Well, let me rephrase that. 1/2 of 1/6 of her health. Yeah, 6 divinities not working out. But, again, did the little switcheroo. Now I'm the only person using Divinity, and the rest of us are using grenade launchers, shotguns, the norm. And, as you can see, it goes a lot smoother. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity as well to talk about the Divinity against, ads, because there is a lot of ads here. I'm using it somewhat against them, and here, it's sometimes okay at killing some of the very small ads like the Thrall, just because it has such a massive magazine of like 165, you can mow them down. But if you're trying to kill a knight by yourself, it takes an embarrassingly long time. This thing is really not meant for damage output, it's meant for buffing the rest of the damage output. So, similar to Kalli, the Divinity just having one augments already existing strategies. I mean, you can take Shuro Chi down with shotguns, add one Divinity to the mix, and you're likely going to take her down just a little bit faster. And so, for this encounter, I'm going to rank, just using one Divinity, an 8 out of 10. Very, very good, but the reason it doesn't get higher is simply because, like, you don't need it as much as it helps in Kalli. This one, it's pretty easy to stun her, just all using shotguns, so throwing on Divinity, it's nice, but it's not essential. Okay, so moving on from there, the next encounter of Last Wish, we have Morgoth. And, of course, the first time we had to use all 6 divinities. Now you may be thinking, oh, Rick, this is going to go we know it's going to go terrible. We knew too, but we had to do it. We had to do it for science, for memes, for the love of the game, and it turns out it's terrible yet again. Funny enough, with 6 divinities, where everything just does absolutely no damage, we were still able to get him like almost to half health, which kind of shows you that Morgoth really isn't the tankiest boy. I switched to a different gun at the very end there, but yeah, it's pretty pitiful when it comes to damage. But of course, did the switch. Now we just have one divinity. And something I noticed on this encounter too, which is interesting, is that if like I'm the person running Divinity, I'm gonna be using Divinity for the entire damage phase. That's the whole point of using this gun, right? So it completely frees up your heavy slot for ad clear. Like I had a Swarm of the Raven, but I was using it just to kill the Eyes of Riven and all that stuff, and that actually helped quite a bit. So often you're using your heavy for boss DPS that you kind of forget how good heavies can be against normal ad clearing. And so that is actually kind of an advantage of being the guy that runs Divinity. Run, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, machine guns to just wipe out those ads. In any event, when we actually damaged Morgoth, as you can see, things went a lot smoother using the normal one Divinity method. And so this thing gets a ranking of 9 out of 10. Excellent gun. Now, moving on from there, we have the next encounter, the Vault. And this one is the tricky one because, yeah, the Divinity is scoring very high. It's an excellent gun for boss DPS. Well, what if you don't have a boss? What if you just have a bunch of scary knights that are going to wipe your team and just ads everywhere? That's the Vault encounter. So how's the Divinity fare here? Well, we're pretty much all 6 of us are using the Divinity here, and sometimes it feels actually pretty good. Like sometimes you'll see me kill the knights using Divinity, and you're like, wait a sec, that's pretty fast. And we were thinking the same thing. Like we were like, wait, this is actually quite good. It kind of turns out, though, that if you're just 100% solo and trying to kill one of those knights with a Divinity, it's not very good. The times where it seems good is kind of tricky times where there's at least 2 people with the Divinity shooting the knight at the same time. That is just enough damage to stun lock them, make them stay still, you get penance going off, and they die pretty darn quickly. Especially if someone else is around, like if you're shooting them with Divinity, someone else is using a shotgun, a sword, whatever, obviously that does amazing damage as well. The problem, again, is if you get caught kind of by yourself and you're just not outputting enough damage to stop these knights. Now, the thing is, you can actually, start with the Divinity, switch weapons super quickly, and then use a sword or some other heavy, and you can get a few shots on the target before your buff goes away. So you can actually get buffed by your own Divinity, which is kind of nice and will allow you to take those knights down pretty quickly. But to be honest, that seems like a lot of extra work when you could just use a shotgun from the start and kill these things very fast. So, fine to use for a laugh, but if you're being serious, the Divinity just doesn't output enough damage, and because you're spread around the map, you don't always have teammates around to make the most of its buff. So in the Vault, it actually gets a 4 out of 10. It's below average. Okay, it's time to move on to the final boss encounter against Riven. This is the big damage phase, and of course, we going for the cheese. Can we cheese Riven with 6 divinities? Who knows? It could be anything. Well, as you can see, it turns out that, just like the last few times, 6 divinities is pitiful. They just do no damage. In fact, when we look at the damage numbers here, that is the lowest I've ever seen. Like, I've tested a lot of guns against Riven. I think this is absolutely the lowest amount. So yeah, 6 Divinities, absolute trash, but we had to do it. We had to do it. Now, let's take a little switch, and I am going to be using Divinity again, and we're going for the cheese with, grenade launchers and other stuff. And as you can see, things start to work out a lot better. We are able to get that cheese damage. Now, I will admit, it actually took the team a few times to get this right. Some people didn't kind of realize how good spike grenades were, I guess, but we did do it. It's actually a little bit harder without auto-loading and all that stuff to get Riven into cheese. So the fact that we were able to do this with the Divinity kind of, again, shows that this gun is very viable and very good in a boss DPS encounter. So here, one Divinity gets an 8 out of 10. Pretty darn good. But moving on, we have one final encounter for this raid, and that is the Queen's Walk. And here, there's a lot of adds, and especially if you get teleported in, then there's the Knights again from the Vault encounter, and traditionally, the Divinity has been absolutely terrible against those guys, but is it any different here? No, it's not. So, yeah, this thing, I mean, if you can get multiple people with it teleport in at the same time, you can again stun lock those knights, which is kind of a nice feature, but overall, like killing the thralls and stuff, it does a fine job, but an auto rifle or pretty much any other gun would be far superior. There's really no big damage phase you need to do here. There's really just no reason to use it in the Queen's Walk. And so guys, it gets a 4 out of 10 here again. And we come to the final rating for this gun. This is the rating throughout the entire raid, and it's an interesting one. This is either ranked super high, 8 or 9 out of 10, or super low, 4 out of 10, depending on whether there's a boss fight or not. So, for the entire raid, that probably evens out to around a 7 out of 10, at least in my books. Definitely an above average gun. Definitely a gun that you do actually want one person on your team to run, but make sure they're switching off of it for the Vault and the Queen's Walk is all. Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.